Hi, Thomas from Field Tennis. Today I will be showing you some tennis ball machine drills, and I'll be using the Slinger Bag. But even if you have a ball machine that's not a Slinger Bag, you can still follow along, because I will show you some progressions that you can use with a ball machine. We're going to start with technique, and then we're going to progressively increase the difficulty, the challenge of the strokes, of the movement and so on, of the ball timing, so that you have some kind of structure, some kind of progressions in order to work on your game. Before we go on to drills, I just like to mention a little bit about the main purpose of a ball machine. Why do we use a tennis ball machine? We use it in order to groove in our strokes and to work on our technique. That is the main purpose of a ball machine. When you have a lesson with your coach and you're correcting a certain flaw in your technique, for example, you're hitting a forehand and your left arm, your non-dominant arm, is just hanging down, so you're playing like this, and maybe your coach is teaching you to put your arm across and maybe catch your racket, or whatever method they use, but in any case they're working on your non-dominant arm. Then when you have a lesson with your coach and you're thinking about it, you're constantly focusing on it, you will execute it correctly. But when you don't think about it, your old habit is going to come in and your arm is still going to dangle down like this. So when you're with the coach, you are in a stage called conscious competence. That means you're executing it correctly when you're conscious, when you think about it. And now you have to get into unconscious competence. That means you have to automate, so that this arm is going to be here whether you think about it or not. And in order to do that, you need a lot of repetitions. Now, we're not talking about millions of repetitions, but definitely a few thousand. So I would say the minimum range to automate a certain new movement that you haven't been doing is probably around between 2,000 and 5,000 repetitions. And because you don't want to bore your partner, or no one wants to rally with you in order for you to get those 2,000 to 5,000 repetitions, you use a ball machine. And you simply put in the repetitions, and your brain is going to remember. You will remember a certain feeling in your arm, and through many repetitions you're going to automate that, so that after a while you will be playing forehand correctly when it comes to the non-dominant arm without thinking about it. In the first stage of working on your technique, you don't want to do much movement. You want to keep it simple, and you need to receive nice balls. Why do we need to receive nice balls, and why are tennis coaches feeding from the basket when we work on technique? That's because when the player is thinking about a certain movement, so let's use the example of the non-dominant arm. For example, player is playing like this, but we want them to play like this with the non-dominant arm. Then their attention is on the body, so they're thinking about the arm and they are paying less attention to the ball. And because they are paying less attention to the ball, they don't judge the ball flight well. So if you are receiving difficult balls, let's say you're playing with your partner and they don't give you nice balls, then you're going to miss a lot of strokes or hit them not cleanly, simply because you're late on the ball, or you're too far, you're a little bit too close, and so on. And that's because your main attention is not on the ball flight. Your main attention is on the body. And so tennis coaches know that, and we know that when a player is thinking about their body, they don't judge the ball well. That's why we need to give them a really nice ball for a few hundred or a few thousand repetitions, so that you can get in a groove, feel a little bit what you have to do, and then we're going to increase the difficulty. So in the first stage, I've set the Slinger Bag ball machine to certain settings, which you're going to see on the screen. And I just want to get nice balls and, let's say, work on my forehand. I can start with the remote control, and I'm going to work on my forehand non-dominant arm, and I don't want to do too much movement, so I have to wait a little bit to see where the balls are coming, and then I just repeat. And another point when you work on technique is that first always practice down the line. So this is the setting for the Slinger Bag ball machine, but that's how I would start working on some technical corrections. So you can see I'm just moving a little bit here, and then I'm working on my technique. So one other thing to keep in mind when you're working on your technique is that you must set enough time delay between each feed of the ball so that you're not being rushed. This is not an intensive drill. You don't want to hit balls as fast as you can, but you need time after you execute one stroke, one repetition. You need time to check if it's okay, because there's no coach with you and you are your own coach, so it's all up to you. So let's say you're working on this non-dominant arm, you have to feel and check, okay, did I catch the racket, where did I catch it, maybe you caught it here, maybe you caught it there, so you want to correct on the next time, so you need just a second a bit to check, to feel if that's what you're working on. Maybe you're working on something else, maybe you're working on balance, and you don't want to be hitting like this all the time, falling off, if your main objective is having good balance. So that means after you hit the ball, you want to feel for a second or two that you're very stable, balanced on the leg, in this case neutral stance. So make sure that the setting for the feeding is not on too fast. So now I'm hitting the ball, I can check with myself how was my follow through. I'm aware I have enough time. I could give myself maybe 1/10 of a second more. Let's say I'm working on my balance, I have enough time to check how's my stability on the left leg. Okay, it's okay. And then I'm getting another ball. So I could do maybe just one little setting less time, that would still be acceptable. If I want to work on technique, to have even a bit more time, but this one was okay already, so not too fast. Another thing to keep in mind when you're working with the ball machine is how many repetitions are you gonna do in one set. Different ball machines have different containers, so let's say Slinger Bag can hold 144 balls. So hitting 140 balls in a row is typically a bit too much for your focus and for repetition, so it's good to do little breaks in between. So I would suggest that you try to hit between 30 and 50 balls in one set, then pause the ball machine, pause the Slinger Bag or your other ball machine, have a little break about 30 seconds and then go for another set. If you want to work on your volley, you can use exactly the same setting. So I will show you now. I'm going to start and hit a few ground strokes that you see that the setting hasn't changed, and then I'm going to come a bit closer and hit a few forehand volleys, and you will see that the ball is just about right. So with this setting that you saw for the baseline, working on your technique, getting a nice ball, you can use the same position, nothing changed. So here's my forehand position. I can work on my forehand. So you see that's the same setting. So now if I get closer, I can work on the volley here, and it's just about the right height for a simple volley technique you want to work on. So you're somewhere here, and I can practice volleys from this position without changing much. So unless I want a really lower volley or faster volley, then I would have to change the settings. But this setting is just fine if I want to work on basic technique. Let's say you want to practice something that, for example, that you don't swing across like this, which is a very common error. So players swing like this, and you say, no, I want to practice staying in the direction of the ball, like this. And this is a nice setting and a nice comfortable frequency of feeding. Can you work on the smash with the Slinger Bag? Yes, and actually you can leave the Slinger Bag exactly where it was. You can leave the same speed setting, the same frequency setting. The only thing you change is the angle, and you simply select the maximum angle upwards. You will see on the picture, and you will be getting just some nice balls to practice your overheads here in the center. So these balls that I'm receiving are not super high, but they're just nice if you want to work on your smash technique, so that the ball is not coming from very high downward, very high speed. So it's is just a nice height from where you can practice your overhead. So you can see I'm just here somewhere in the center and the ball is coming nicely. So again, same settings as before, just maximum elevation angle. The next stage in working on your ground strokes before we add movement is to work on directions. So let's say you are still thinking about certain technical element of your stroke, and to increase the challenge a little bit, you're going to now try to change directions. There are 4 combinations of playing directions. You can receive down the line, return down the line, receive down the line, play cross court. You can receive cross court, return cross court, or receive cross court and play down the line. So I suggest that you start first with the incoming ball coming down the line, because that's the easiest, and then we're going to go to the cross court ones. So I've kept the same settings as before for the Slinger Bag. I just shifted the ball machine a bit to the side, because it also serves as a guide for me to hit in that area between the sideline and the Slinger Bag. So I'm using it a bit like a target area, so it marks my target well, and I'm gonna be hitting the balls coming from there. I'm gonna hit one down the line and one cross court. If you miss a few shots while you're hitting, if you feel that you're not too consistent, then just stick for a while with one direction, maybe hit 10 or 20 down the line shots and then start alternating. So keep in mind, we're still working on technique. You're still very conscious about certain corrections that you're working on, and we're adding just a little bit of challenge so that you now have a little bit of targets. One is there, one is deep cross court, and we still need some time between the feeds for you to check if you did something correctly. So I'm going to demonstrate some backhands now. So let's say you are correcting over rotation on the one-handed backhand, which is very common. So players hit like this, they don't stay sideways long enough. And now I want to work on this part of technique. I want to feel that I stay sideways long enough. And I will also practice hitting one ball down the line, one ball cross court. So I hit the ball, I practice that I can stay a bit so that I don't do this. So that would be a mistake. So I want to practice how can I hit cross court and hold my positions. So you see the setting is set so that I have enough time. So let's say I'm working on cross court, and the next one I'm working on down the line, and I have enough time to check my position. I can take a look at my left arm, how is it, and the balls are not rushing me, the feeding speed is just right. The next combination would be to receive the ball cross court and work on your down the line and cross courts. So I just moved the Slinger Bag there to the side. I did some adjusting, some testing, and I think it's okay now. So we'll see how the ball arrives. So again, I don't want to do too much movement. I'm very focused on my technical objectives. So my technical objective is that I don't over rotate like that. So I want to groove this sensation in, that I am more sideways, and at the same time I want to work a bit on changing direction and feel how that works. So you will see that receiving the ball cross court is more challenging, especially when you hit the ball down the line. So this is something you need to work on. And it's quite likely that when you start with this situation that you're gonna miss-hit the ball here on the tip of the racket, which means you need to get enough balls repeatedly in the same direction for you to figure out what kind of adjustment you need to do. So very important to practice the balls coming from cross court, because there's a little adjustment that has to be done. And if you're not aware of it, you will keep miss-hitting the ball. If you work on volleys, on volley technique, it's very important to practice this angle, so coming cross court and hitting down the line, because this one is the most difficult to hit the ball clean. So it can deceive you a little bit if you're all the time receiving the balls from down the line and you're hitting them cross court and everything seems to be fine. You're controlling the ball well on the volley. So it can deceive you a little bit because you're thinking that your volley is fine. But sometimes the only thing that needs to change is the direction of the ball and you hitting in the other direction. So very important to test yourself and work on it, that you're receiving the ball at quite a sharp angle from cross court, because you're gonna get short cross court passing shots and you wanna play them down the line, for example, and you need to make sure that you're hitting the ball clean, that you figure out the little adjustments that need to be done. So this is one situation. I just angled the slinger bag a little bit more than on the baseline training, and now I'm working on hitting the ball down the line from a cross court feed. So you see, it's very easy to hit the ball like this. You have to figure out the angles, because you see, if I just hold the racket, this incoming angle creates that outgoing angle. When you're receiving the ball like this cross court, it's important that you really go into it, that you cut off the angle, because if you're a little bit too passive, it will always go out. So you must cut the angle, you go right into the ball and you try to figure out what is the move, because of course you can go a bit too much across like this, then it's too much down the middle. So you really have to watch the ball well and figure out what is the angle to get the ball down the line from a cross court feed. So that's what the ball machine is perfect for, because you're receiving the same ball and you're trying to adjust the shot like this one. So you're grooving in and you automate not only your technique but also the little adjustments of the racket angle that cannot be explained to you by the coach. You simply have to feel, and for that you need repetitions and simple adjustment. You're just aiming more left, more right, and so on, and you try to figure out how to hit an accurate volley down the line when you're receiving a sharp cross-court ball. The next stage of increasing the challenge of your work on technique. So first stage, no movement. Second stage, no movement and changes of direction, and also receiving different directions. And now third stage is to add movement. So I've set the slinger bag on the side a little bit. I will be receiving cross-court balls, and I will be practicing 3 types of movement on the forehand. The first one is neutral stance, so I will be going 1, 2, 3 into neutral stance. So 1, 2, 3 neutral stance, and the second type will be 1, 2 open stance, 1, 2 open stance. And then the third one, I will move the machine a little bit, will be again 1, 2 open stance, but this time moving around. So I will go 1, 2 open stance. These are the most common footwork patterns on the forehand side, and it's important that you drill them so that you execute them very smooth and quickly and without loss of balance. So let's look at the same footwork pattern on the backhand side. So for one-handed backhand, it's not very comfortable to play 1, 2 open stance, but you can practice it. It's more comfortable if you're a two-handed backhand player. So I would mostly focus on doing 1, 2, 3. I have to figure out a bit the distance. I just started, okay, so I have to go a bit further, and then I'm practicing 1, 2, 3 and hit the ball. This one was more just 1, 2, so I'm going 1, 2, 3, then back, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, adjustment 1-2 is possible, but again, we don't play much on one-handed backhand, but it's good to try a little bit to feel how it goes. Usually we don't run around the backhand stroke, so we just move to the backhand, but we do run around the forehand. Most of the players do, so it's good to practice the simple movement around the ball. So I want to practice the 1-2 that I showed you before, so I can leave the same setting so the balls are kind of coming to the backhand side, and I want to find the position for my forehand to do 1-2. So I'm practicing 1-2, moving around the ball, then I recover. So 1-2 and hitting inside out, recover, 1-2. So the feeding speed is just right. It's just a bit slower than reality. It gives me a little bit of time to feel how I hit the shot. I recover and hit the next one. So I would advise you that you groove in this type of footwork, so that later when it happens in a real situation or in a match, that you're not complicating with your feet, that you can see that it's a very simple, like this one here while you're turning. So this one here, your open stance and weight transfer. So as you practice, as you groove it in, it will become second nature. The final and the most challenging stage of working on your technique is also working on your timing. So when it comes to timing, we can talk about three parts of the ball flight where we hit the ball. We can hit the ball when it's falling down, on top of the bounce, or on the rise. So it's good to get used to all three types of timings, of rhythms of the ball, so that you handle all types of balls that come towards you when you play a match or just rally with your friend. So I've kept the same settings on the Slinger Bag. It's just sending balls like before, and first I'm going to start hitting the balls when they are on the way down, so that gives me the most time. And it's important to get used to that rhythm, because you can relax your stroke, you have a lot of time, you don't feel rushed, you can calmly execute the stroke. So these aren't quite deep, I can go here. Yeah, so somewhere here. So I'm waiting for the ball to start its journey down from the top of the bounce, and I'm getting used to this timing, this amount of time that I have from the beginning. So that's the first one. Then the second one would be that I step in a little bit and I try to hit the ball somewhere here on top of the bounce. So I can just calmly practice. I'm hitting the ball on top of the bounce. You can also, of course, work on changing directions. I can go down the line, so now we can combine. I can also go a bit further and I practice moving to the ball and hitting on top of the bounce. So before I showed you 1-2, let's say I'm practicing now open stance. So I'm going open stance, hitting the ball on top of the bounce. And of course the last one would be to practice hitting the ball on the rise. So now I stand a bit closer. First you must just try to control the ball, that you don't hit too hard, you just try to time it. So I'm just timing the ball to hit on the rise in a controlled manner. And then the most advanced way of practicing timing would be to do all three. So I'm waiting for the ball, I go a bit inside the court, I'm hitting on top of the bounce, and I'm hitting on the rise. Then I can let one ball go and I go again. So a lot of time, a bit less time, and even less time. So timing is very challenging in tennis, and it's very important to practice these little adjustments that you have to do, also in terms of technique, how much to close the racket and so on. So you have to get the feel for that. We can't explain in English how many degrees. So today I was just showing you ball machine drills that are focused more on working on your technique, because that is the main purpose of a ball machine. That once you know a certain correction that you should be doing, that you can get enough repetitions to do that. You start first with just static position, you just work on that stroke, and you can gradually increase the difficulty by adding directions, movement and timing. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.